Here we go again. No, that's not just us doing another weekly live stream. It's the name of our 5,373rd series, by my estimation, here at Kicking the Seat, called Here We Go Again. We're going to be doing a deep dive into remakes. Now, this is not what the show is going to be from now on. It's just, every once in a while when there's a remake coming out, and there seems to be a lot of them because Hollywood is out of ideas, we're going to pull over and take a look at where these remakes come from as far as comparing and contrasting what often turns out to be the big studio Hollywood version with the indie version or the foreign version or the lesser known Hollywood version that they decided to dig up and turn into a different kind of IP. So tonight I am joined by Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions in the Spoiler Room, and the blonde in front herself, Katie Glidewell, sporting these awesome bunny ears. You might be wondering why. And if you are wondering why, you're going to want to turn back because that means you haven't watched the movies we're talking about tonight. That is Speak No Evil from 2022 and Speak No Evil from 2024. So, yes, there you go. Now, are you telling me to stop or are you just imitating the poster?
No.
Okay.
I would never.
Well. But no, thanks everyone for joining. I think this is going to be a really fun and interesting discussion because, I had never seen the original version of this until 4 a.m. last Saturday morning. I got up and I watched it. And then like 3 hours after I finished it, I went to see a late morning matinee of the remake. So it was a fascinating experience having both movies kind of in my head side by side as they're going on. And I really do not like the remake. I love the original, and it's fascinating to me. I told Jeff this in kind of our correspondence leading up to this, that this new version, this Hollywood take on it is, I think this is what Hollywood thinks of American audiences. If this is the caliber of movie that we're getting and the sort of pandering and the inability or the perceived inability for us to handle really dark material. I would love to see the James McAvoy starring version with the ending, just because this movie completely diverges paths in the third act, and it's quite phenomenal. But could we have handled that ending, squeamish stateside folks? I'm curious to dig into that with the panel tonight. Mark, I actually want to start with you because you are the freshest, having seen the Danish film from 2022. You squeezed it in right before the show, and you
Literally
said
finished it a half hour ago.
Right. And as we were jumping on, getting ready to go live, you said you're glad you caught it because now you're pissed. Now I'm wondering, are you mad at the American version or are you mad at the Danish version that we asked you to watch it and prep for this show?
Well,
let's go.
Drink to answer that. Ooh, that's a heavy. Whoa.
Is that a Danish brew?
No, this is Cider Boys from Stevens Point Brewery, Imperial Peach. So
there you go.
But to answer your question, after watching the Danish film, because I watched the American version first, and I thought it was all right. I mean, McAvoy really helped save a lot of that movie. I love his performance. I'm like, do more horror, McAvoy. Between this and Split, I'll watch you in anything. Horror. So, I dug it. I'm like, okay, yeah, kind of straight American horror. Then watching this one, the Lean Mean original version, and I was fine. And then, you get to the divergence of the ending. And then, the ending was good, and yet it also ticked me off in a couple of ways. Mainly because it's
I'm sorry. I want to put up spoilers because I just realized there may be people who foolishly have not watched either version, and so we're gonna get into the whole thing here. So sorry, go ahead, sir.
The thing that I had, actually the issue I had with both is that the dad's useless. The dad character just proves to be useless in both versions. But I enjoyed the smarts of the Dutch one a lot more, especially watching it after watching the US one, because like you said, I'm going, they made a lot of choices, which I'm sure we'll get into in the American one with our couple, not the evil couple, but the good couple that made no sense after watching the original, going, why did they make those? It barely made sense while I was watching it. And then watching the Dutch version, I'm like, this is all you had to do. You didn't have to add this other layer of things you did with our other couple. I'm like, fine. It's just foreign cinema giving its audience more credit to put pieces together of what's going on. The reason the ending ticked me off was actually the reason I was ticked off during the American one, but the American one, it happens a lot sooner. So many red flags. I'm a parent of 2 kids. All right. I'm a parent of 2 kids. When I watched the original and we get to the scene where they meet up with him on the scooter and says, "Oh, let me take your daughter on the scooter. Do you have a helmet?" No, I will refrain from swearing, but let me just say, in my head, I'm going, no, thank you. And just stand firm. And if these 2 couples, that this guy didn't like it, too bad. Well, it's been nice knowing you. We had great dinner last night. Enjoy your trip here in Italy. We'll just go our separate way. My kid's not getting on your strange bike. I don't care if your wife and son, in quotes, is sitting here with us while you go driving with my kid with no helmet. It's like, no. But there was so many red flags with that family in the US version that in today's day and age, it was hard to believe that couple would agree to do any of what they do with that couple. In the Dutch version, they set it up.
Sorry, it's Danish. I just want to get it right, Mark.
Danish. My apologies.
There might be some Dutch or Danish folks watching,
I don't want to
throwing things at the screen. Maybe even Danish.
I don't want to insult that, but in the Danish version, the family was far less red flaggy about it when they were together for the first time in Italy, to where I'm like, okay, this is more natural. I can see them. Yeah, let's go out to this country, because there were no red flags shown with the evil couple in the original version, until you get to the last third of the film. My problem was, and we've got the spoiler banner up, while the ending does diverge, which I love darker endings, the scene where they're taking the daughter felt highly unrealistic, because I don't care what type of couple they are. This is your kid they're taking. And this other couple, the evil couple, did not have guns on them. So I don't care if he was an intimidating bastard. I would have been clawing at his throat or jumped out of the car, the front seat, because we know that handle works. And in the back seat, the mom, I know if that was my wife, she would have been beating the crap out of her female counterpart as they take the kid if she couldn't get out of the car. They made no attempt. The guy didn't even grab the wheel at some point. They're in a car, for crying out loud, driving away as their kid is kidnapped. I mean, that whole scene there, with the way I understand they were playing, the couple was afraid and intimidated. But as a parent, I guess for me, even if I felt that way, you took my kid and you cut their tongue out. No, I don't care if I'm going to die. I'm going to beat the snit out of you and try to get to my kid.
I get it, Mark, and I understand where you're coming from, and that would be my instinct too. However, people are different, right? But there is a difference between what, saying, "Oh, I would do anything for my kid, I'd fight like hell," and being in a situation where you are taken by surprise, you are threatened, and someone is doing this to your family. Plus, there's a car that pulls up, and mysterious people jumping out and getting into the car. We're all heroes until we've got a knife pointing in our face. So I get it, but I also understand, especially the types of characters that we've been dealing with for the previous 90 minutes. They are not heroic. In fact, they go out of their way, where Bjorn talks about how helpless he feels and how neutered he feels by life. He confesses that to Patrick, and I think that cemented Patrick's in by saying, yeah, I can just punch this guy in the face a couple of times and he's going to be so shocked because that whole encounter with grabbing the daughter out of the car and the whole clipping the tongue thing, that was maybe a minute. Now, I'm sure it felt much longer to them, but it's a smash and grab, or a slice and grab. So I get what you're saying, but I also, the reactions to the couples in in the remake, I think, are far more problematic and unrealistic and more horror movie like, where I thought there was a bit more authenticity. It's tough because I would like to think, yes, if I was in that car, I'm with you. I would, hell or high water, they're not getting my kid. But I also know I have had a knife pointed in my face, and I all of my John Wayne machismo dribbled out of my shoe.
Well, but again, though, maybe it's because I grew up in the inner city of Milwaukee or whatnot, but for me, I would not have cared. Fine, you want to cut me, that's fine. You can, with a knife, stab me or try to stab me at least once, and I will, especially with the way how frustrated and more, I guess, more sure of herself the mom was, as far as in how her beliefs and how she was and everything. She was a far stronger character in both versions than the husband.
Those are luxury beliefs, Mark. I'm going to tie this into the very end of the film. I don't know if it'll change your mind, but I think thematically it makes sense. First of all, the mother in the Dutch version and in both versions, you're right, there are some similarities there. She has luxury beliefs, like she's not she doesn't believe in eating meat. She's very kind of controlling and everything. But those are all things that are fine when you're in your air conditioned apartment or just taking a lovely stroll out to the countryside to meet some people who are kind of different. It's a whole other thing. It doesn't amount to courage or smarts or bravado when you're in a life and death situation like that. And I think the point of the Danish version's ending is, at that point, after the daughter Agnes has been kidnapped, they drive the couple out to this quarry, a quarry that we've been to before earlier in the movie. And at one point, Bjorn and Louise ask Karen and Patrick, they say, "Why are you doing this?" And they say, "Because you let us." Now, in the American version, that exact same exchange plays out. But at that point, I believe Patty, played by James McAvoy, has a gun on the couple. And they are very clearly like, if you move, we're going to shoot you. In the Danish version, to your point, Mark, they are not armed. They've got the little pocket scissor thing that they use to cut out the tongue. But at that point, that was the final test of this couple's mettle. If they said, "Because you let us," then that's the key to say, well, we're not going to let you do anything else. We're going to charge you and fight you, because at that point they weren't naked. What happens next is they say, "Because you let us." The couple's still in shock. And then they say, "Okay, take off all your clothes." And what do? They take off all their clothes and they descend down into the quarry, where they are pelted with giant rocks and stones, and they don't even really attempt to get away. They pretty much just, they are being pelted relentlessly, but they just kind of lie down and they die as these whimpering, crushed animals. And I think that's thematically, that works in with what we saw happen in the car. It's not everyone's cup of tea. And I hope people are watching this who've already watched the movie, because we've just spoiled the ending. But I want to we'll get back to this point, but I want to get, Jeff, tell me about your experience with the Danish version and the American remake.
Well, let me start by saying that I think Mark's take on it is one that the filmmakers probably relish, because I think they want it to be one of these films you think about, what would I do, and talk about with your spouse or date or friends or whomever you're with. I think they wanted, this to be sort of controversial and get that sort of discussion going about what would you do. And I agree with you too, Ian, that we all think we're heroes. We all think we're going to be running into that fire. But look at, stories in the news where police are lined up outside the schoolrooms and they've got rifles and everything else, and they don't go in because, it's something else to sometimes put yourself out there for whatever reason. But I think I understand your point, and I think that's probably a good reaction that the filmmakers would probably relish in. It comes down to two things for me that I think separate these films. And I think you're exactly right about confidence in the material, to what you're saying, Ian, and a lack of feeling that audiences would be able to understand that from the folks who remade it at Blumhouse and stuff, who usually have done some very good films. But this one, I think they pulled their punches on. The other thing is, I think, a consistency that is apparent in the first movie and not here. If you go through the first movie, the parents are so passive to the point that it almost starts to become comedic. Mm-hmm. They're very calm, they're very quiet, and I think about a third into, you realize this is a social satire. It's a very droll one. It reminded me of Force Majeure, which is also sort of about a sort of Nordic mentality where parents are not quite as stalwart or smart or strong as they'd like to think they are, and they're actually pretty weak. There, that was played for very dry comedy. Here, it's played for more of dark, sort of sinister, tragic comedy. But what bothered me so much, and to Ian's point directly about the second version, is the movie wants to eat its cake and have it too. They sometimes are incredibly passive and incredibly wimpy and stupid, and then other times they're loud, too fighting, too pushing back, and obnoxious themselves, and they're stupid. I'll draw one case in point. When they're yelling at each other, Mackenzie Davis and Scoot McNairy are yelling at each other in the bedroom, and they have no sense of how that would travel. I mean, James McAvoy does not have to be right outside the door to hear what's going on. It's absurd. And these people are supposed to be admirable. No, they're not. They're stupid. And then like when they do some other things where in the first movie it was like, well, maybe we could see what they're going along with that. It seemed a little bit more part of the course, and maybe the hosts being not quite as aggressive. I think James McAvoy does not give a great performance here. I think he actually gives a very telegraphed performance almost the entire way, or at least maybe the editing gives a very telling performance. It lingers on him too long. His eyes look a little evil. I mean, God damn it, the poster right off the bat is telling you he's the bad guy. I mean, it's just, and shouldn't we be relating to the good family in a poster like that? I mean, if that's sort of our in, I don't think the villain should be our in. But again, that's where I think the American version does a number of things wrong. But I just think that the American couple in the second one, unlike the Dane couple in the first one, are very inconsistent, and I think it makes the movie inconsistent. You're left scratching your head like, well, are they passive or are they aggressive? Well, I guess they're passive aggressive. Then how they get into all this situation, and then they start to do things to try to redeem them and make it worse with the gun. I mean, the charm of and sort of the awfulness at the same time of that first one is they don't have to use big ass weapons on them. They don't have to threaten them too demonstratively. They go along pretty well with it just by one character, the Bjorn character, being stronger, just being more sort of sure in his ways. And with Patty in the American version, he's drunken and he's sinister and he's boisterous and he's too loud. And I mean, even the chair when he drags in the very first scene, it's too loud, it's too big. That's the American sort of garishness of taking clever, sly material and making it, sort of typical horror affair or something where we want to cheer on the good guys as they get revenge at the end, which is silly because that's not the story.
Very well said. And we'll get back. We're all bringing up stuff that we'll come back to. But Katie, I want to get your high level thoughts on the movie and explain your ears, because that is, I think, one of the keys to the differences between these movies. Yeah.
Yes. So as Mark was saying, when you get to the point in the original one where they take Agnes, I can't relate to that because I would have had my family and my ass out of there way before that. And it's because of this in both films that they stayed. And that is a little stuffed bunny. Now, in the first one, in the original, the kids are much younger. They're part of it, but they're not they're not a big factor of it. However, there is a huge thing in the first one that I told my friends. I'm like, yeah, no, I knew exactly what was happening once Abel opened his mouth. And they're like, why? I'm like, because, spoiler alert, we already talked about how Agnes gets her tongue cut out. And honestly, if you haven't seen the trailer for this film, which I said is the most hated trailer, I think, of 2024. It's like, it has just been saturated on the internet. And it's like, you don't really need to see the movie because you saw the trailer. What's worse is the new trailer that even shows more of the movie.
Oh, does it really?
Oh my God. Really? How could you even make this worse? Yeah, because it shows what happens to Patty's wife. I apologize. I forget
Claire or something, or I forgot.
It's Ainsley,
Yara.
but yeah, it shows what happens to her. I'm like, really? You even did worse on the second trade? Oh my god!
In
But
case we
anyway.
can't get them into the movie to know that the bad guys do get some comeuppance, let's show the last 10 minutes.
But in any case, the thing with the kids being older, when the older kid does this and shows his tongue, there's no scarring, all that stuff. In the original, you see the stitches in the kid's tongue. So that to me was like, oh no, he wasn't born with a short tongue. He had his tongue cut out. And my friend was like, oh yeah. Yeah, no, that does make sense. I'm like, yeah, once I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they're all going to die. They're all going to die. They're going to kill the kid. They're going to cut out the girl's tongue. I see what's going on. But with the first one, I mean, there's no, let's be honest. We have a picture of all of them on their fridge at home. They told their friends that they were going to this place in the countryside and all that stuff. They have cell phones, so even if there's no reception, there's too many factors that it's like these people would have gotten caught, at least with the Hollywood American version, which I've told people when they've asked me what it's like, I'm like, it's watchable. That's not really a compliment. I'm like, it's fine. It's very Hollywood generalized, way too long. But with that one, like, they're alone in London. They have no friends. They don't know their neighbors. And, James McAvoy is right. It's like, no one's going to know you're missing. No one's going to, it's like, they'll just think, they won't care because you haven't made an impact in any of, in the situation that you're in. So at least in the second one, I can see how they've kind of gotten away with it because, they've found people that won't be missed, I would say. But the first one, no, those people totally would have been missed. But I mean, the first one has me at the score. The music is amazing. It's just such menacing music. And then at the end, it's this beautiful melancholy. And come on, guys, I think we can all agree. The last 25 minutes of the original is way more frightening and intense than the entire, 100 and what is it? It's over 90 minutes. I think it's it's close to 2 hours with the new one.
Just about
it's
2 hours.
It's not
yeah.
scary. To me, I wasn't frightened at all.
But see, arguably, Katie, I think to your great point, the first movie to me works as a psychological thriller. It's not necessarily that scary, like, oh, these spooky things and all that kind of stuff. And as it goes on, it becomes more and more like sort of the room is darkening around them almost. But I mean, I think it's like you're watching these kind of cats play with mice, but it's not necessarily, sort of hitting those notes that would generally be in horror, which makes it all the more interesting. I think, I mean, arguably, Ian and friends, don't you think that the first one is really a study of bad parenting and society's unwillingness to sort of speak up about certain things and sort of this weirdness that we sort of cocoon ourselves into our lives, our cars, our homes, our television viewing habits, our earbuds, et cetera, and miss what's happening around us. The second one, to me, it felt like it was almost like a version of The Outsiders or the, some of those things where there's a weird intruder that comes to the door. And I mean, it also, this material has been done on both sides before with
Wait, Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you mean to say The Strangers?
The Strangers, that's what I meant.
Okay, because I was thinking The Outsiders. I'm like, where was Pony Boy in this version?
Yeah.
That Tom Cruise, he was pretty scary with those bad teeth before he had them done. No, I meant The Strangers. So,
yeah.
The Outsiders, The Strangers, The Interlopers, the I don't know who you are. There's so many of those kind of things.
To your point, Katie was right with the music. That it gives you more that foreboding feel of, okay, when's this going to happen? Because here you have supposedly just a basic interaction between the families at a distance, and yet you have the foreboding music. So you're like, I mean, you're just like, okay, when's this going to happen? But it is kind of telegraphed, even if you didn't see any trailers for the original or whatnot. Okay, this one family, something's going to happen to them from the other family. in that respect. You know, and in the second one, we didn't use the music so much, but McAvoy, yeah, it was telegraphed that there was something off with the guy right away, and that's why I said that was one of the many red flags that you catch with it when you immediately meet the family. But for him, you know, I just enjoyed him playing a bad guy. It wasn't that
he's
I,
very good at playing
you know,
bad
I
guys.
didn't think, you know, it's not that the performance of where I was looking at the nuance, whereas in the original, the main creepy, you know, evil dad was far more nuanced, and that's just what we're all talking about in general is the the change between Hollywood and foreign cinema, giving the audience some credit versus laying everything out for you, you know, having the telltale signs, you know, so you know something sinister is going to happen in both. First one handles it better because, yeah, Katie, that score was impressive compared to the first one. It added a lot more mood and atmosphere to it.
Yeah.
Did any of you watch? We've talked about the American trailer. Did any of you watch the trailer for the Danish version? I have not, and I feel like
I've
that's
not
a blind
seen it, no.
spot.
Sorry. Yeah, mine too.
Because I'm, you know, watching the trailer for the American version, there is no doubt as to what kind of movie it's going to be. I mean, at one point we even see James McAvoy like clawing, reaching through the door. He's got
Yes.
blood all over him and everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that. Well, that isn't in the original Danish version, but I'm just wondering, our actor, and I want to give him full credit, Fedja Van Hout played Patrick in the original. I think one of the things that really set him apart is I don't know the actors who are in the original film. I think they're all solid, but I don't know if there is a James McAvoy type in that cast where you see them in a movie and it's a thriller. You're like, oh, that he's going to be the nut job, or it's going to end up as being a stalk and slash kind of thing. But this actor, you know, he and the actress who played his wife, Karina Smulders, they look like just average middle-aged people who live out in the country. They've got kind of a rundown, charming, rustic house. There's nothing threatening about them except that they are just kind of weird. And they even get into, they sort of mirror this in the American version, but it's kind of like, oh, well, we're not as cultured as you. We kind of do things differently. And that's why we don't kind of understand. We're not on the same wavelength, but we're trying. But when you realize how they're using that kind of, you know, elitist kind of liberal guilt against our hero couple, talking about, there's a great scene in the original version where Bjorn and Louise, no, not Louise, Karen, no, yeah, Louise, sorry, yeah, I keep they changed some of the names around for the American version, but not all of them. It's really weird,
right? Exactly.
But okay, so they
two Agneses.
Right. Oh, but they have kind of they've got a rocky relationship, but at one point they do break down and they make love. And during the night, Agnes wakes up with a nightmare, but the other couple is like distracted. So Patrick and Karen, or we presume Karen, goes into Agnes's room, picks her up, and takes her into the bedroom. We don't see this. We see the next morning or later in the night, Louise gets up and realizes that her daughter's not where she's supposed to be, and she goes into the other couple's bedroom, and Patrick is laying butt-ass naked in the bed. Now, Louise, or Karen, is in between them and the daughter, you know, but it's still a disturbing sight. In the American version, they play that same thing out, except everybody's clothed. But in the Danish version, the next morning, the couple is completely freaked out because their daughter was in a bed with these strangers, and they confront them on it eventually. But Patrick and Karen come back with, well, where were you? Your daughter was up having nightmares and screaming. Where were you? We went in and we tended to her. We comforted her. We invited her into our bed and she fell asleep. What were you doing? And so there are all these like little moments throughout the movie where the tables are kind of turned. Talk about weapons. I mean, these are little stabs, little digs, 1,000 cuts, to the point where at the end, when they're standing on the edge of that quarry, I could see how it's almost like their life flashing before their eyes and looking back Usual Suspect style. I'm like, we should have done something when this happened. This would have been the perfect opportunity to leave, but we didn't. We should have said something. We should have done something. And they're just kind of like, and now we're facing our imminent death and there's nothing we can do because we're paralyzed with guilt and shame.
Well, and
Um,
it's also the fact that it's Bjorn's idea to go to the country. Like
Mhm.
when he, finds the shed that has all the remnants of all the other families that have been there, and he figures out what's going on. And then he also finds the Danish kid. God, I forget his name. Sorry. It's not
in the original,
Abel.
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 And then
Yeah.
when he finds Abel like in the pool drowned, he never tells Louise. Louise
Yeah.
is completely dumb to anything that is going on. She's like, I'm just gonna fall asleep in the back. It's like, okay, because he realizes like I brought you guys here, I put you in danger, this is my fault. And then when Patrick and Karen have them in the car, again, he's like covered in dirt and he's crying because he knows they're gonna die. No matter what Patrick says, he knows. In the American version, they have way more communication and stuff like that. So they get to, it's like they're going to kill us. But especially Mackenzie Davis, she's more like, we need to get out of here. And then you see Scoot like break down. She's like, yeah, that's great. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you to break down and have a freak out. We're going to die. Get your shit together. We got to go. And I'm like, all right, well, at least there's that. But I know what you were saying, Mark, that you would fight. I think Bjorn is just so his complete will. It's not his will. More of his strength of who he is just so atrophied in that moment that even when he tries to fight Patrick and he's like, he's like, I could just see, and I have to give the actor credit. Martin, what is it?
Morton Buren.
Martin Buren. I mean, because he's like, I always keep smiling. I keep doing this. And even when he's outside the car, he's like, and it's like, you can just see that he's just broken. But for them to be stoned to death, like that is just, I haven't seen anything like that in a modern film in like forever. And then you just know at the end, which this is what I love about European films, is that, you know what? It's not going to be a happy ending, kid. In fact, there's going to be another story that's going to be probably even worse than this one. And we're going to show you a little bit, because then when you see Agnes at the end, but she's still got that damn bunny. And that's the thing with that original one, the fact, and I wish they had done that with the American version, that it would have been underneath the seat, because that to me,
that would have been
really
so
would have
much
gotten
better.
reactions from people in the audience, like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But the fact that the bunny was actually in the house in the American version, I was really disappointed in that. Because
but to that point too, go ahead, Katie.
I remember watching the Danish version the first time, and when they look outside the car, everything, and then when he goes inside the house, and then Agnes finds the bunny underneath the chair, underneath the seat, and even Louise is like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, really, Agnes? Oh god damn it. I'm like, yep, I hear you, lady. You just need to honk that horn and get the hell out of there. Like, don't go inside, don't do anything else, because no. And I don't either. In any case, it's so dumb after either one of the dancing scenes that that family would have stayed. I mean, that's just insanity.
Well, it works in the first one better, I think, because the couple is complicit the entire time. And they're also racked with guilt, and they have that same sort of bad guilt that parents have about not doing enough for their kids and all that kind of stuff. And they make some key changes in the script, which underline that very thought. I mean, the parents are making love and they miss the fact that the kid is, having a nightmare. So they're doing something, and that then plays on their guilt, and they acquiesce to it. In the second one, they keep doing all these things to make these parents more admirable during it, but then it doesn't work when they're also as passive as they are. I mean, they have to make Agnes have this, trauma that she needs the stuffed animal as a almost a, whatever you call them, comfort animal or those kind of things. And it's like at that point, they would have said, we'll buy you 20 more. And you know what? We're not going to do this for you. But of course, that's part of the problem with the second movie, the remake, is because they keep giving these people more intelligence than the first people had. And they don't have the sort of guilt that the other couple keeps carrying with them. And I'm lost. I'm telling you this, and I don't know what to think. And then I make love and I miss my kids. So now I'm a bad parent. And then they're stoned at the end because it's almost religious. I mean, it's like this kind of playing on, original sin and guilt and all this stuff that people carry with them through centuries and religions and cultures and societies. And, even sort of the passivity of sometimes, what goes with sort of as the Nordic cliches. It also reminded me a lot of Funny Games, which is another movie about complicity on the part of these people who should know much better, and they have dozens of opportunities and they don't take them. And ultimately, at the very end, they're just casually thrown overboard in the rowboat because why not? And you've been completely passive the entire time. Why should right now be any different? And I think this movie is making a similar kind of commentary, at least the original.
Refresh me, Jeff. Didn't Michael Haneke remake his own Funny Games? Because I watched them back to back years ago, and that was a weird experience. But
that didn't work because of a couple things. Not only did they, take it out of the sort of, the original country and such, but it was, I think, a decade at least later, right? And I think, it felt a little bit like they missed maybe some opportunity where, with the internet and cell phones and other things like that becoming much more prominent, that they might have had a little bit more awareness than maybe at the time when they did the first one, which was just on that cusp, I think.
Yeah. I want to talk about some key differences that really bothered me between these versions. One, there's that scene in the trailer of the American version where the couples are introducing themselves and McAvoy says, "Oh yeah, I'm a doctor." And then later on, there's a scene in the kitchen where Mackenzie Davis cuts her finger and Scoot McNairy's like, "Oh, it's a good thing we have a doctor in the house." And McAvoy says, "Oh, I'm not a doctor." That scene's in the original. But it ends much like the ending of the full film. He says, "Oh, I'm not a doctor." And they're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I don't have a job. I don't believe in work." And then the scene cuts and they're on to the next thing. In this one, there's all this business about like, "Oh yeah, I say that because I'm uncomfortable around people," which they did repeat in the original. But then they go into, "Of course I'm a bloody doctor," and I'm like, wait, so he is actually a doctor? He's doing all this stuff where he's like checking out her neck and stuff. I thought he was faking the entire time. So I don't know if the character is lying or if they just, again, expected people to, say, "Oh, that's the only way they could afford this place," which I think that line comes up later. But it takes all the mystery and fun out of it. Now, talking about the house in the Danish version, it is this very simple, I mean, it's a nice-ish looking country house. Looks old, but it's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just a house. In the new one, I'm like, is this like Pablo Escobar's like rustic country getaway? Like, you've got this automated gates and multiple buildings. It's a freaking compound. I'm like, and by the end, I understand why they did it, because they have to have the gag with they're trying to drive away and they got to get through the gate and all this other stuff. But I will give the movie this. There is a line that I think is so perfect that wouldn't have belonged in the first movie, but I loved it. When Patrick, Patrick and oh my gosh, Kira, yeah, damn it.
Yeah, Kira.
They're letting our heroes get away. They're letting them drive away, and they're gonna keep little Aunt there, and the American couple is gonna go back to live in peace. So they think. As they're driving away, I think it was Scoot McNairy. I'm running out of their names. Looks in the rearview mirror and he sees James McAvoy just push the boy into the pond.
Yeah, just tosses him right into the pond.
Yeah,
right. And we've established that he can't swim, so we know what that's about. And then so they pull the car over. Dad comes running out to jump in and save the drowning kid, and it's on. We're into the horror movie cliche climax that we all know has been coming. But later on, James McAvoy says, and this is the line I'm getting to, he says, "I should have left him in that pond with his parents." And I'm like, oh my God,
yeah.
That's so dark.
Yeah.
Like, that's what was under there at the bottom, I guess.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't hear that.
Oh, yeah.
Reading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a great line. That was actually one of the lines I really enjoyed as well, because it helped imply how he did things and just his character in general, and that there's probably bodies strewn all over this compound where they have
Yeah.
in the remake.
That's why they need the compound.
Yeah, that's why they
Yeah,
needed
there
the
you go.
compound. Yeah,
Oh,
and don't get me wrong, when I say the end of the original made me just as angry, in a different way than some of the elements in the remake, I still enjoyed the original. I enjoy what it was trying to say. I appreciate that. Part of me though is just so tired of the nihilistic endings of majority of modern horror. Like, it feels like that they have to do this nihilistic ending. You can't have. That was the one thing that I didn't mind, in all honesty. While it was horror cliche and tropish, I didn't mind so much the more heroic action sequences and such at the end of the remake, just because I guess either my mood or whatnot, and I appreciate, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it. And I will say the Danish one is a lot smart. The original one is a lot smarter than the American one for sure. But for me, I just had a little bit of problem with both. One of them is more personal taste, and the other one was more technical and script story taste that they chose that ticked me off a bit. But I appreciated the original one more after seeing it. It was just the nihilistic ending. I've seen that so much in so many horror, and there it wasn't as forced, but I've seen so many horror films where they force a nihilistic ending as well, where you're like, oh, really? That's how we're going to end it? Then I'm just like, come on. They don't.
well, here's
end on the down.
but I mean, I think the thing is, like, thematically, I think it all works. And what I thought was really interesting was, and this is where I really noticed the divergence or the split, talking about James McAvoy, between the films, is the Danish version ends right where the climax of the movie should have been ramping up.
Mhm.
The whole thing of, like, well, they're in the car and their daughter's just been taken in. If they were to have redone that for the American version, honestly, that would have been when the parents get the resolve, they punch out our foes, and then they go on the lam across the countryside. They end up back at the house, but the couple's back at the house too, and they've got their bartender friend, and then it becomes the American remake essentially. When I realized that the American version was not going to go that route, I flashed back to that trailer and all the scenes of, like, okay, Mackenzie Davis is getting the X-Acto blade out or the utility knife, and James McAvoy is, like, reaching through the door. I'm like, okay, I know this is just gonna become The Shining mixed with, like, a standoff action movie cliche, and that's exactly what it was. I would have at least, it wouldn't have saved the movie for me, but the fact that all of our good characters make it out alive, mom, dad, daughter, and the kidnapped little boy, I'm like, this is too polished. This is too clean. There needs to be a little bit of nastiness to it, because there's some nastiness in the first part of the movie, even if it's kind of subtle. That it's so Hollywood that I think it just underscored what's so great about the Danish version, because it had guts. Like, what if Louise had been killed, or they lost Aunt? And what if he hadn't been able to be revived in that pond? What if Scoot McNairy, I keep forgetting his character's name. Damn it.
Ben.
He could have died.
Ben. Okay. Ben Bjorn. I should have made that correlation. What if he hadn't been able to save Aunt, and then they end up in that basement with
Somebody
McAvoy
should have fallen off of that roof. It was
Or-
that would have been
but what I'm
more,
saying is, like-
maybe somebody else, but then
Kira did.
dying himself.
Yeah, I was gonna say Kira.
Well,
did.
but I mean, I'm saying of the
it's
good
one of our
people.
heroes, right? But what I'm saying, Jeff, is, like, if Aunt had died in that pond, then that scene where they're being held hostage in the basement and they're doing the whole cheesy, like, oh, we've got your bank account information now, we're gonna take all your money and sell your car, it would have put them almost in the same place where our protagonists were in the climax of the original, where they're in shock because they've just lost, they failed to save someone, they found out they're completely useless, and then what do? Where do they go? It would have been more of a battle of wits versus nerves. But I'm rewriting the movie, unfortunately. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Here is where you want to make the American version still appeal to the American audiences a bit. give it an edge, and take a risk. Have it to where Patty throws throws the kid and into the pond, and he keeps driving.
Oh,
he sees it in the rearview mirror.
The family just keeps going
because he's
Can
so
only do so
tired.
much.
He's so tired of coming back. He sees Patty throw Ant into the pond briefly, like out of the corner of his eye, and he keeps driving. No, but think about the ending for that, and then how you put that in context with the characters, because in the remake, he's getting a little more fed up with his kid having to have the bunny all the time, which again, that felt unrealistic. How visceral he was towards his kid having the worry bunny. I'm like, why? I'm being a dad. I guess I'm looking at it from my perspective of being. I'm like, so what?
Explain to her that lives are on the line and they can get another little toy.
Right. Well, no. Later on, I don't mind that he, I think he should have just left the bunny behind. I would have as a parent and let her cry. That's fine. But I'm saying up until then, when she was the worry bunny and because she has a condition, and he seemed so not understanding of that for his kid.
Well, no, I mean, that's understandable, because I think there are differences in parenting styles between parents. There are the, over nurturing, like, oh, you need an emotional support animal. And then there's the other side is like, whatever's wrong with her, we need to, the animal could be seen as a crutch. It's not helping her grow emotionally. And we could end up in a situation where she's so dependent on that damn thing that she gets us all killed. Literally. So I get where you're coming from, Mark.
I have a child that has quirks. We'll just say that has certain conditions in that, and I guess for me, from that perspective, just understanding that, and especially with his kid who seemed to have something, even at that age, for his his protests were over aggressive, in all honesty.
Are you talking about the remake or the original?
The remake. Okay. His reactions and his the guy in the original, he was fine, because they didn't make the bunny such an emotional crutch, which was one of the problems after watching the original. I had a problem with the remake, thinking back to it, going, why did they do that? They didn't have to do that. Why? Look at the original. They were able to still use it as a MacGuffin or as whatever, and still have it do what it needed to do without having to give your kid, a condition or some such or something. Well, it's just like with the couple too, though. Suddenly in the couple in the remake, they have to have some kind of discourse because of some text that was sent to his wife. Whereas in the original, they were just a couple and they had a kid. And they weren't the most, as we mentioned, they aren't the most strong couple or family. They aren't the most aggressive or the most stalwart company. They're very more kind of pushovers a bit. But at least it felt better and more natural than in the American version, which just felt like it was making stuff up because, we have to make our new good guys flawed as well for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And
Well, Mark, I'm in agreement with you mostly, because I do think there is, like a lot of things with the American version, there's just too much added business that you don't need. If you trust your audience to just understand, okay, you can have a married couple who are just having a rough patch, or things aren't the same since they had a kid, they've grown apart, whatever, all these kind of unspoken things that you can read into a situation, rather than, a few years ago, a coworker or a lover or someone sent me a dick pic and that became a whole thing. I never got over it. The one thing I can understand, I'll go back to this point very briefly about Ben being overly insensitive to his daughter's, needs. I don't know that we really get a sense of what her condition is, or if she actually has a condition, because to Katie, you brought this up earlier. The daughter in the original version, the original Agnes, was a child, like a little kid, and you can understand, like,
she's like 7 or 8, maybe.
maybe
that,
if
but that's
that.
like
Yeah,
her
maybe
bunny.
6.
Like she needs
Yeah.
that to go to sleep, right? This one, the girl's like 12 years old or something, and I'm seeing her with this bunny. I'm like, if they were thinking that they were casting a 12-year-old to play 7, that didn't work. But also, if she does have some kind of a condition, I, as an audience member, need to know, because if she is just 12 and she's been so coddled by her overbearing mother that she can't not have her bunny, it's kind of like, every other kid in class has a cell phone. I'm going to cry and scream until I get mine. I don't, I needed a bit more information, because otherwise I'm saying I'm not going back for that bunny. I can understand it more in the original, because you can see Bjorn behind the wheel of that car working it out. Like, God, I just don't know what's the worst could happen, but okay, I'm going to take this risk. And you see him like turn the car around, and it's a struggle with him. I think he knows he's making a bad decision. Yeah.
There's so many subtleties in the first movie, despite the fact that it is a steady and kind of, interesting march towards this terrible ending. It's funny. I think as I was watching the remake, I kept wondering, rather than going the obvious route of, they turn the Patty character into this sort of bloodthirsty, crazy fiend, right? And, he's too loud, he's too aggressive, and he's too obnoxious from the very get-go about a number of things that you wouldn't like him, you wouldn't want to be around him. What if they had made that character and the wife and the very subtle, like really quiet, and had, like in the remake, the sort of ugly Americans who are boisterous and talkative, and then they're still missing the signs, but they're so self-absorbed and so self-involved and think there's big. But I mean, I guess I miss these subtler villains. Like I think if he was a very subtle villain, I think that's one of the reasons too that maybe, if I'm thinking about it, Funny Games worked better in the first one, because they were very subtle. Those guys, even though they were doing things like breaking the eggs and holding they were in tennis talks, and they were kind of almost easygoing about it. And again, we didn't know who they were. Where Michael Pitt, by the time he played it, had already played a couple of crazy, so it was a little bit on the nose casting. But if you're going to remake it as an American thing, it might have been interesting to have, sort of the aggressive Americans become almost more of the problem than these quiet, easygoing hosts who at the end show that they've been that quiet cat waiting to get them into their lair and then sort of dropping the claw.
Yeah, you're not going to sell that to the American audiences, though.
Well,
What did you guys think about the fact that Karen in the original was more of an equal to Patrick, and Kira in this one was they made her be like, oh, I was his victim too. I've been stuck here and stuff. After rewatching the original, I'm like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like that. It's like, well, I have to do this, all this stuff. It's like, no, if
they're all victims.
Make them equal bad guys. It's like she could have been lying and all that stuff, but it's like, I just didn't like the fact that they did that. And it's like, no, you guys are shitbags. Like, I mean, just own it. Don't try and make it that she's a victim and,
But see, that's Mark's point, isn't it?
Do and stuff.
That's Mark's point. They wouldn't buy that in America.
Whole, like, beating that she was being beaten by him also. It's like, oh, crap. Yeah, none of that's in the original. It's just more... I don't know.
Heck, even
that's for the American audiences. They have to make the woman the victim, because it can only be one bad guy, and the parents have to be sort of strong, but also kind of clueless, as opposed to the themes that you're talking about in the first one. The wife is in on it. She's bad too, but they're subtle, and they're not like, oh, I was his victim first. That's so the American version of, to your point, Mark. You can see the meetings where they're saying, well, we sure as hell can't cut that kid's tongue out. That kid can't go back home with half a tongue, or we got to make this woman a victim too, because no woman's bad like that. You just see all these concessions being made.
Let's not even forget my problem with the quote unquote good couple in the remake. You get even a male gaze camera shot with the husband, with our guy, the scooter recruit, Ben, or I forgot his name.
Ben Dalton.
Yeah, Ben. You literally get that when you first meet this couple, the passive couple, is you literally get male gaze cam to where yeah, he watches the guy drag the camera, but he stays on the image of his wife a little too long and scary. And then you have, Ben's wife looking at him, like noticing her and not, yeah, it's one of those things in the US going, really? We're doing this with the couple? Why couldn't they just be a couple? And that's where I appreciate the original more, is the fact of they're just a couple, the evil couple, they're in together, they're paired. And in all honesty, I will say right now, in the original version, I almost get that who wears the pants in the family is actually the wife.
Yep.
Overall, between the two. And between the two, I think she's a little bit more of the
Instigator,
cerebral person than her husband is in some ways.
the plan.
Well, I mean, and they
because
definitely
the
play
whole-
that across both versions. Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
No, because it's like the guilt that Karen puts on them when Louise is complaining. It's like, Agnes doesn't want to sleep on the floor. The bed's too small. It's like, sorry, we don't have this huge house and all that stuff. But one of the things about the original that I wish they would have kept in the American version, because it's such a key factor. The fact that in the original, they only have one bathroom. And there are at least 2 scenes where it's like, oh, hell no. When Louise is like taking a shower and she hears the door open.
That's right.
And then, and she's just standing there. And I mean, that is a freaking power play like no other. But then when Bjorn is like brushing his teeth and Patrick comes in, you actually, because you don't know who comes in, you figure it's Patrick when Louise is in the shower, because I mean, that would be the more menacing thing. But then when Bjorn is brushing his teeth, Patrick just comes in, pisses, like looks over his shoulder, and then like Bjorn's still brushing his teeth, and then Patrick just looks at him and goes, and then walks out. One, okay, we're not washing our hands. That's one factor of it. But 2, it's like, again, you guys, if you guys are allowing that to happen, you need to get the F out of here. You can say small bed. You can say that the fact that, yes, this is your house, but when I'm in the shower and you just come in, no, we got to go. But yeah, I just wish, because I mean, in the American version, they have their own bathroom and all that stuff. And I get, again, it's the Escobar compound. But it's that closeness and just the that just makes that Danish version so great. I'm actually surprised because have you guys seen Eden Lake? Because
No.
the director did Eden Lake, and when I knew that gave me hope that the ending was going to be like, oh crap, no, similar to, but because Eden Lake's ending is like, oh, that is a gut punch. Yeah, I mean, I know he didn't write the script and stuff like that, but I was hoping, knowing that he directed Eden Lake, that there would be somewhat of a more menacing ending than it ended up being. Because again, that's one of the things when anyone asks me, like, it's like, well, the ending's completely different. They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. Basically, you saw the movie in the trailer.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I think, we talked about our original Danish actor who played Patrick, Fedje Van Hout. The thing I responded to was he was just this average kind of middle-aged guy, had a bit of a wild side, whatever. But I still bought it. I used to love James McAvoy as an actor. When I first saw him in Atonement, I think that's a great performance and a hell of a movie. And then when he played Professor X in X-Men First Class, I'm like, that's really interesting, and I liked him through a lot of those movies. But as he became, and I no offense, Mark, but when he started, what he did, Split, and then he started getting jacked and playing these more outrageous parts rather than this kind of like buttoned up, kind of proper English actor, and he became a movie star. He immediately became less interesting to me. And this movie cemented what Stephen King has always had a problem with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, partially because of Jack Nicholson's performance. If you read the novel The Shining, Jack Torrance is a real guy. He's a flesh and blood character that you could meet on the street or be the professor in your class. And he takes his family off to this secluded hotel to earn some money and ends up becoming, essentially possessed by the ghosts of this haunted place, and he goes insane. Jack Nicholson in The Shining is crazy he's got the eyebrows from the moment you first see him on screen, and there's like no A to B. It's just like, A to Z, and he's like chasing Wendy up the stairs, and she's got a baseball bat, whatever. In this movie, that's the exact same thing that we get here. He's ripped, he's jacked, he's got the neck muscles or the veins popping out of his neck, and even in the trailer he does that creepy smile where it's like he's smiling and then he's frowning and then he's smiling again, his mouth's all twitchy. I'm like, yeah, there's no mystery here. So yeah, it's the subtlety. I wish that I could have admired his performance. He does a good job with what he's asked to do, but I don't think he was asked to do anything challenge, or actually he was asked to be a movie star in a disposable thriller.
Well, I read in IMDb that they they had to stop because of the strike filming, and they had to pick up for the last 4 days. I can probably tell you where they picked up those last 4 days, because I feel like there's a huge difference in him being a freaking beast when he's like walking. I'm like, oh, someone's been lifting a little bit. Like, look at you. Did you just put on like 25 pounds? It's like, I see what you've been doing, because you can't act. I'm not saying he can't act. It's like he's not allowed to act with strike. That's for the audience, not for you guys.
Right.
But you can't do interviews. You can't do it. It's like, so let's freaking pump you up, James McAvoy. And yes, you did. It's like, yeah, I can see where you guys picked up for the last 4 days. It's very clear.
Yeah, and the pickups were mostly in the end action sequences, because there's this one scene at the end. It's after he had acid sprayed on him. They take his shirt off, and he's just like Hugh Jackman, Wolverine ripped, literally. Yeah. And so then the rest of the movie, up until where he gets injected, where he gets injected by Agnes with the syringe, he's just jacked. I'm like, are they going to cast him as Wolverine? Because I'm like, he is different than the earlier scenes in the film.
It's really funny you said that, because you're actually the second person within 24 hours that I've talked to about that. And I was like,
and why has he gone that route? Why does he want to be that Jack guy? I mean, what roles does he want to get? I mean, is he waiting to be the new Hulk or something? What's the story? It's a boring look. It's limiting. It forces him into either a macho hero or a bad guy. When before, I mean, his performance, to your point, in Atonement and as Professor X were marvels of subtlety, dare I say, marvels. But the other thing, too, I was going to say, and Mark, you said an interesting point. You go, yeah, try making that in Hollywood. Exactly. The era of films where there were subtle villains that weren't, given away right away, or, the only closest thing you get to that these days is, oh, you think that character is good, and then here's the rug pull, they're actually the bad character, and you can see that coming a mile away too. But I kept thinking of all films while I was watching the remake of Suspicion, because Cary Grant played the husband who Joan Fontaine thinks is trying to kill her, and in the original script he did, or was trying to, but the audiences and the movie studio said, wait a minute, Hitchcock, you're going to have Cary Grant be the killer in this? You can't do that. So they completely changed the last scene, and the rug is pulled. But about it is, up until that very point, you don't know, because he's playing it very subtle, very close to the vest. Even if he was jacked like Hugh Jackman in this, if James McAvoy had played it almost like he was when he's dressing down the CIA in that great scene in First Class, he's like, oh, by the way, you're too busy thinking about what pie they're having at lunch today. It's strawberry pecan or whatever the hell the weird flavor is. That would have been so much more interesting. Oh, he's civil. He's English, and he's very dignified about all this, and he's taking us to. Oh, wait a minute, he's making us pick up the $300 bill for the restaurant. That wasn't right, but he did it so cleverly. I guess I don't hold it against him. That would have been a better way to play the villain. But you're right. I don't know if Blumhouse or American people making horror would ever even think of that anymore. But it used to be the way a lot of those kind of movies are. Barry Fitzgerald and Then There Were None was the bad guy in it. And when he comes out and tells the Vera Claythorne about his plan. He doesn't change a single intonation from the way he was the entire film. He just is saying bad lines. That's fantastic. Where's that today?
Well, and when you were asking what's he trying to do with that figure, maybe he's trying to get Henry Cavill money, because honestly, that's Henry Cavill's physique. Like, I remember seeing Henry Cavill. I remember seeing Henry Cavill in Superman and thinking, when did Henry Cavill decide I want to get my body to look just like Gaston in Beauty and the Beast? And it is there. You cannot tell the difference. Like, he looks like Gaston. It's like ridiculously cartoonish. And James McAvoy may be doing that, but you know what? Yeah, like I said, maybe he wants Henry Cavill money. I mean, Henry Cavill's in everything. He's in funny movies. Well, he's in dumb movies. He's in action movies. He's a good guy. He's a bad guy. He's in, here's a TV show. Let's have Henry Cavill do this. Here's a Netflix series. Let's have Henry Cavill do this. He's going to be Superman. Maybe he's going to be Wolverine. I don't know. Maybe not. How about James McAvoy and Giant?
But I see him becoming big because he had to become big for Superman. And then subsequently, because he had the franchise going, he had to keep that up for 6 years. But McAvoy did it for Split, and then he keeps it up. I don't know why he's trying to be Joe Piscopo when he could be Peter.
Oh, God, Joe Piscopo. I remember when
he could be Peter O'Toole instead of Joe Piscopo. But
I remember when
Joe Piscopo.
I remember when Joe Piscopo went Jack the first time I saw him, because he had been out for a while. All of a sudden he came out and it was like, it was just like Carrot Top as well.
Yes.
Carrot Top was this skinny guy. And
what are you doing?
He just comes out like just boom, like someone shoved an air pump up his butt and just kept pumping.
Oh, yeah.
And what's hilarious about, I know we're kind of going on a tangent, but it kind of comes around to McAvoy's performance in this. And he's jacked, and there's really no mystery to him being evil. Then you look at the choice that Dave Bautista's done. He's actually dropped his muscle mass. He stopped being as jacked because he wants more roles. He
knows it's limiting.
And you know what? For me, mad props to him, because I like Dave Bautista. Yeah. I think there's a lot of acting chops there that he could exercise that he doesn't get because he's been muscle bound guy. Why McAvoy's going the other direction, it's hard to say. And maybe it was just this film and he got bored and he was working out and he got too busy and he didn't realize how strong, his muscles, how big he got. I don't know. But the subtler guy in the original for Speak No Evil worked better because it brought his, when he was being aggressive in that, it made it a little bit more edgy than McAvoy, who, again, I love McAvoy's performance in Speak No Evil. It was entertaining for me. I knew he was the bad guy right away, even if I hadn't seen the 80 million trailers. But I liked him playing a bad guy. I just liked his bad guy. But at the same time, if you're looking for subtlety and more nuance, your Patty in the original looked more of the part and felt more of the part than McAvoy. Even from minute one, we see him. Even if you didn't see the trailer, you're like, yeah, there's something up with that guy. He's not getting on a scooter with my daughter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and the actress we kind of talked about here is Aisling Franciosi, who plays Kira in the remake. Now, I've been a fan of her since I saw her in The Nightingale a few years ago, and then she was in a movie, a very good little scene movie called Home with Kathy Bates a couple of years back. Yes. And she's one of those actresses that I've been waiting. There you go. To see her get the chance to really show people what she can do, and unfortunately, it's sort of like a Jennifer Lawrence thing with Winter's Bone. Like she gets attention, but then you're waiting for that breakout hit, and you just hope she does something with it, or she's given the right material. And this might be the biggest thing she's done, like as far as mainstream commercial success. What am I missing, Katie?
Voyage of the Demeter.
Oh yeah.
She was
Voyage of the Demeter. Yeah, she's
right.
She's the token female in the film.
Yeah,
and I think but thank you for bringing that up, because
vampire victim.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because that does kind of underscore my point. Is she's getting these big parts, but they don't really showcase what she can do. She's serviceable in both of those movies, and including this one. but it's like, damn, why can't she get something that if she had been, I still think that part should have been older, but if they'd done a straight remake of the Danish version and had her be,
Play
the
that
Karen
part.
character, she
Yes.
could have played it, not have to
Absolutely.
change
Yeah.
a thing, none of this victim stuff, because
Yep.
she could really pull that off. There is quite an age difference, it looks like. And plus, you're right, that whole thing of like, oh, we don't know if she was telling the truth about being one of Patty's victims, but then that pulls me out of the movie because I'm thinking, well, is he into, I don't want to get too graphic here, but does he like little girls and little boys? Because they're not just kidnapping, daughters. It's kind of running the whole gamut. The other, and we're going to close it out here in a second, but the one other thing that I appreciate about the American remake, besides that line about the pond, and I can't really give the movie credit, I think it just, seeing it again in the course of like 3 hours, caused me to reconsider something that I thought of, but I hadn't really registered watching the first one. When Abel, the young mute kid who had his tongue ripped out, in the original, when the families first meet each other in the country, they first stay together in the country home, and Abel wakes up with these screaming nightmares, and Patrick's like, oh, don't worry, in like a couple of minutes, he's going to be out again. This happens all the time. Watching the American version, when that scene happens or its equivalent, it's like, oh my God, he's waking up every night having screaming nightmares about his tongue being ripped out and his parents being murdered in front of him and living in this house with these murderers. It's one of those things. It's like, again, like a Usual Suspects thing. You don't think about it until the very end, and you think back about the other details. It's so good and so twisted. Oh, but
well, and that's
go
like
ahead.
the original. And I, again, because with the original, both couples speak different languages. So, and we don't necessarily get to see what Patrick and Karen are saying. Like, they could be, I mean, especially when he's driving drunk down the street. I mean, they could be saying, it's like, I can't wait until we kill these people, all this stuff. And, Louise and Bjorn have no idea. And they're like, oh, keep it down, turn it down, all this stuff. But with this one, the only one who doesn't speak English, although I think he understands it, but he's not writing in English. So it's like, I thought that was an interesting take on it, is the fact that Ant's the only one who's like, he's trying to, tell Agnes what's going on. She's like, I don't understand because you're writing like in Dutch, or I don't know what language this is and stuff like that. But a huge fault in the film, especially the American version, is like, why would he know where all that stuff was and be able to have the key and then go down and do all that? That to me was like, I liked it so much better in the original, where it just happened to be open, even because Patrick at that point didn't really care, because he's like, I'm going to kill you guys anyway. So if you want to find this, fine, you're done anyway. But the fact that they went to that whole thing, that Ant took Agnes down, showed her all that stuff. It's like, there's so many factors in that I'm like, no, no.
And also the bit from the trailer where we see Ant go, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, yes, I figured that out. You don't have to. No. My God. But anyway, gang, thank you for hanging out. I know we went a little bit over. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry, this came in a while ago, but we actually have a super chat from Petty. If you're still watching, thank you for
Petty.
hanging on.
Hello.
Petty's back. Hello, everyone. I haven't seen the movie in question, so I'll just be listening carefully to your opinions without adding my nonsense to the chat. Any nonsense to the chat. I just wanted to take a moment to say hello. Hello, Petty. Thank you very much. And check out both movies if you get a chance to, and let us know what you thought of both of them. We can always come back and check out the chat later. So appreciate it. All right. Well, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Of the modern horror films that have come out, Speak No Evil follows all the tropes and the formula and everything. And if that's what you're looking for or whatnot, it's watchable. It's not like the American Speak No Evil is horrible and it really shouldn't have ever been released. Okay, it is of this year of the wide release horror films, it is one of the better ones. But as Ian will attest to, and even as I will attest to, and my son will, it's not a very high bar this year. Okay, we for wide release films we haven't. But as far as the bulk of wide release go to the theater horror, it is watchable. It is not horrible. It's just when you watch the first one and you see how nuanced and tight they do things, you go, why couldn't you have done that in this American version? Added a few of the tweaks, you know, that you want to, but still give it a little bit more edge in this original, in this remake. You know, if this was made by A24 instead of Blumhouse, it would have been far closer to the original as far as some shocking stuff being done.
Yeah, but Mark, I think A24 might have even just re-released or funded a re-release of the original.
Yeah,
you know,
that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Mark, you said that
most
the
of it's
American
said in
version,
English. Anyway, most of it is spoken in English.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I settled in at 4 a.m. I'm like, oh, I got to make some coffee so I can read subtitles. But there's only like subtitles on a couple of scenes. It's crazy. But no, Mark, you said that the American version is watchable. And I agree, but the Danish version is memorable. Right. And so to me, it's kind of like our Beetlejuice conversation last week. Yes, it is a sequel. Yes, it's nice to go back to that world, I guess. But when you ask me, could we have spent however tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to make this new version? I was like, yes, you can recast and remake the original point by point, and you're going to draw in a new audience who don't know what the Danish version is. It's only 2 years old. But I say, you know, just don't bother. Come up with something new. Do your own thing, or commit to a point by point remake. Because the only reason I'm going to think about the new Speak No Evil is when I go back and rewatch the original, which I'm going to do, and be like, oh yeah, I remember now why this is so much better than what they tried to pull off the second time around. But yeah, I agree. It's a low bar for horror. This does qualify as one of the better thrillers we've gotten this year, but it's an embarrassing low bar. However, it's fine. Yeah, it's
fine. Yeah, that's the thing. Here's the glowing review. Here's a screen grab. It's watchable. It's fine.
Here's the tagline for you.
In front. I'm like, all right. It's like, sure. I mean, that's.
Yeah. No, here's, I'll recontextualize the new poster for you. When you see James McAvoy going like this, he's saying, the original's better.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to let y'all go. Thank you very much for hanging out. I am always, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We got Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast, and Katie Glidewell, the Blonde in Front. Thank you all for hanging out. This was fun. I like doing this. Here we go again, this remake thing. I think for Scary Season next month, I have an inkling that we're going to talk about, because it's 40 years old this year. A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh.
And the 2010 remake. Oh my goodness. So yeah, we might come back and do that. And we'll be talking. I think we're going to take next week off and come back in a couple weeks, possibly with Megalopolis or Megaflopolis. Who knows? I'm coining it there first. Oh, Petty says bye. So you were hanging on. Thank you, Petty. We love you.
Oh, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Next, if I'm invited, when you do the here we go again, do you think you can do like 5 seconds of the Whitesnake song in the beginning?
Here we go again on my own.
No,
You're
gonna have to pay money for that if you do.
I'll even dance on the hood of a car.
Seconds.
I'll get into the white video vamp outfit, and I'll dance on the hood of a car. I'll do that for the intro.
Mark, I don't know if that's an offer or a threat, but either way. No, Katie, I'll take it under advisement. I'll see what I can get away with on YouTube.
Scary.
I don't want to get demonetized or copyright strike. Yeah. But maybe we can all sing it off key as the opening of the show. I like that idea. Since we're live, I just got to point this out. This Friday night, if you're in the Chicagoland area, more important, the Park Ridge area, you can come out to the Pickwick Theater, the historic, beautiful Pickwick Theater. Not only historic because I got married there, but historic because Greg Gliena, the filmmaker who created the original Meet the Parents in 1992 as a short film, pretty much, that was discovered by Universal Pictures and turned into the blockbuster franchise starring Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro. He's going to be at the Pickwick. I'm going to be at the Pickwick doing a Q&A after a screening of the original Meet the Parents, which has been kind of this lost film. Yes, you can see it on YouTube. It's kind of a crappy version, but I think they're restoring it and they're doing this whole like anniversary thing. So yeah, come on out. It's 7 p.m. and there'll be tickets and information down below if you want to check it out. And yeah, come say hi and see a really funny, really different version of the movie we all, or some of us, love and know. But yeah, until next time, everybody, thank you very much. If you like this live stream, please like and subscribe and all that business. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks. Take care, and yeah, subscribe to Shudder and watch the original version of this movie. Yay!